The Vancouver Canucks fall 3-2 in a shootout in Edmonton. It's preseason. That doesn't really matter. The bigger news is a new season of Rink Wide Vancouver starts right now. And we welcome you inside the Rink Wide Vancouver studios in downtown Vancouver. Jeff Patterson joined once again by Irfan Ghaffar. The hockey wasn't great, Irf, but it's good to be back with you and another season of Rink Wide Vancouver. Get the kinks out here in the preseason. Just one exhibition game to go. And we're going to do what we always do here on Rink Wide Vancouver, and that's bat around a bunch of topics coming out of the hockey game. We want your feedback, your input. Our social channels are available on the screen there. You can see them. You can hit us up with your comments. But I want your comments. First of all, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Good summer?
Summer was good, but it's hockey season. Ready to get going. Was in Penticton for training camp. Observed an awful lot there. We've seen the Vancouver Canucks work their way through 5 of their 6 scheduled preseason games, needed overtime, and ultimately a shootout. Leon Draisaitl deciding that it's fair game just to wind up and rip one at Kevin Lankin. And I guess when you're an NHL goalie, you got to be expecting just about anything. Draisaitl looked like he wanted to finish this game. Of course, his shootout goal didn't end it. Victor Arvidsson did after Jonathan Lekkerimaki and Daniel Sprong had shootout attempts that were denied, or in Lekkerimiki's case, hit the post. Yeah. But look, the Canucks ice a young lineup, a relatively inexperienced lineup, a bunch of AHLers with a sprinkle of National Hockey Leaguers to meet the requirements of preseason. McDavid and Draisaitl in uniform, along with Arvidsson, Corey Perry, Stuart Skinner in goal for the Edmonton Oilers. So based on the lineups the two teams iced in this one, you kind of thought it would be one-sided, so give the Canucks credit. They ended up losing in a shootout, but hey, maybe it's a moral victory this late in the preseason when they left all of their best players behind.
Yeah, some of those guys on the Vancouver Canucks roster will just be happy to skate alongside McDavid and Draisaitl in this preseason game. I mean, look, when the roster came out and you saw it, came maybe Jonathan Lekkerimaki, you're looking at him to maybe try and do something, and then obviously there's Niels Höglander, Kiefer Sherwood, an interesting name there, and then Atu Ratti, right? He's the one that, everyone's kind of been talking about this preseason. Is there a spot for him on this roster? And, after watching the game, I don't think that he did enough in this one. You've talked about it. We've all talked about it. It's do something. Like, you got to do something in these games to try and make your head coach notice, who's obviously standing on the bench there. But other than that, I mean, it's an experience for some of these other guys. They're probably, a lot of them are going to go back to, are going to go to Abbotsford now at some point this week, maybe keep a few bodies around for practices. But once they get back to Vancouver here, all systems are kind of going to go, and you're going to bet that a lot of the big guns will probably dress on Friday night.
Rink Wide Vancouver getting up and going for another season. Again, Nerf's going to be here as my wingman for a good portion of the games. We'll have some rotating characters roll through on the nights that Irf isn't available. But just looking forward to getting things up and running. And if you were with us last year, late in the season and into the playoffs, we had a ton of fun. Got around, got to Nashville, got to Edmonton, broke down all 13 of those postseason games. Obviously, the stakes not nearly as high here in the second week of the preseason, but the stakes are high for some individuals that are bidding to stick around here till the final cuts are made. And I have to think, the Canucks have 39 guys still in camp. It is time to get down to numbers with just one game remaining. That's coming up on Friday. Hey, maybe JT Miller is going to make an appearance in the preseason. Who knows? Quinn Hughes has only played once, the game out in Abbotsford. But this is a post-game pod, and we will break down what we saw. Hey, we can only work with what we were given. And again, it wasn't an awful lot. The Canucks had a 1-0 lead going to the third period after a power play goal by Archie Bains. Nice passing from Sprong and Sherwood to set up Bains for his first of the preseason, 6 minutes into that second period. And you thought, can the Canucks milk a 1-0 lead across the finish line? They couldn't after Corey Perry walked out of the corner and showed some pretty good patience. Guy's been at this a while, probably doesn't relish the opportunity to score, to play in preseason hockey games, but I'm sure he does relish the opportunity to score. And Perry tied the game at 1. At that point, you knew the Bains goal wasn't going to be enough, but credit to the Canucks, bent but didn't break. They gave up the power play goal by Ben Gleason with Ratu in the penalty box, and we'll get into his night a little bit more as we go here. But Nate Smith responds 19 seconds after the 2-1 goal for the Oilers. Nate Smith, who I noticed him in training camp a few times. I think he's going to be a nice addition down in Abbotsford. He's not going to make the Vancouver Canucks, but doing what he can, makes it to the second week of the preseason and scores the tying goal that set up overtime. Nothing doing there. Wild overtime, some chances. Daniel Sprong on the one sequence that drew the penalty as well. So, again, it wasn't a classic by any stretch. It's preseason hockey. We weren't expecting that, but we're going to have all of our usual features here. We'll get to the stat that stands out a little bit later on. We'll get to the 3 stars of this hockey game. We'll check what's remaining on the preseason schedule, and we'll get you to come up with a Bet365 line as well. Before we go any further, though, Irf, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that today is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation across this country, and hopefully we've all used the day to listen and learn and reflect on the painful past and the many struggles Aboriginals in this country have faced, and what we can all do to help forge a path forward together with respect and dignity for all. We've got the orange jerseys hanging in here behind us, so a day just to take a moment and to think about things. And obviously this is a hockey post-game podcast, so it pales in comparison to real life issues, but this is the job at hand. We try to break things down, and we'll try and lighten it up a little in the preseason. As we said, results don't matter, and the Canucks now 2-2-1 if you are keeping score and keeping track of their record with the one game to come on Friday. But let's get to it. What did you see? What didn't you see? Who are you trying to keep an eye on in this hockey game? And ultimately, what caught your attention?
Yeah, I didn't see anything in the first period. A little sleepy. I think we both sat here after the first 20 minutes and we're like, oh, this could be interesting to see what we're going to talk about. I mean, look, Archdeep Bain's power play goal. I mean, the best players that were on the ice for the Canucks or dressed in this game were on that power play, and they ended up making it work there. Nice passing. Daniel Sprong and Kiefer Sherwood. Kiefer Sherwood had himself a pretty good game. He was kind of all over the place a little bit. And then Corey Perry from McDavid, at 39 years old, you mentioned, obviously, he probably doesn't want to play in these games, but maybe the old body needs it. Maybe it takes him a little bit longer to warm up and things like that. Nate Smith, I liked. I agree with you. I liked him in the preseason. Hasn't been a guy that, is going to make this team, like you mentioned, but he puts himself in the area to go and score a goal, right? And he's able to go and do that just 11 seconds after Ben Gleason made it go up 2-1, and then obviously into the shootout and really overtime. Yeah, it looked like both teams really know what was happening there in overtime. Chances aplenty both ways. And then in shootout, it's anyone's game. Leon Draisaitl just blasting it because he can. I think that's the one thing. But I saw Blake Price tweet out or put on X, if you're not trying one of those crazy Pavel Barber moves, what are you doing in the shootout? So I kind of like that. And I totally agree with it. When Lecker was going down, I thought he was going to do something wild, but, only the post saving his shot. I mean, look, there's a lot of things to like. One of the things we were going to look at in this game was Aatu Räty. Yep. And we were going to look at Jonathan Lecker. Those are the two names that I think a lot of people had circled when they were going into this game. Jonathan Lecker night, -1, 13-26 of ice time, and 4 shots on net. Aatu Räty, -1 again, a couple penalty minutes, 15-47 of ice time. Played 15 minutes, but didn't really notice it much, Jeff. And I think that's where the problem lies for these guys as it gets down into the final deciding period here as to what's going to happen.
Yeah, I guess for me, it was a great first week of the preseason for Räty, without a doubt. And going back to training camp on that line with Höglander and Garland, scored the other night in Calgary. Now, Garland was taken off the line, and so it was Lekkerimäki, it was Räty, and it was Nils Höglander, Höglander was feisty. He was doing Nils Höglander things, mixing it up with Josh Brown, giving up about 6 inches there, but he's not going to back down, and that's what Nils Höglander is all about. But Räty is sort of in the star of the show here, and I guess with success comes some expectations. And so this felt like his quietest night of the preseason. It doesn't diminish the preseason work as a whole, but part of playing and being put in these positions and going up against guys like McDavid and Draisaitl is to sort of see where you stand, and obviously tough to gauge against two of the best players in the National Hockey League. But you just kind of ran the stats there. One of the areas that Räty has stood out is in the faceoff circle. Yeah. He's got that little switcheroo and left-handed shot, but he flips the stick over. Lost more faceoffs than he won. Was 5 of 11 in the faceoff circle, so not terrible, 45%. But for a guy that was dominant earlier in the preseason, that was an area of the game that I was looking at. Not a single shot on goal. And he's in the penalty box for the 2-1 power play goal, the Gleason goal, mixing it up behind the play with Travis Dermott got called for roughing. And so, I don't think of Aatu Räty as a guy that takes needless penalties, doesn't really play with an edge, but, 1-1 tie in the third period, you got to make sure that, you can toe the line, but you can't cross it. And even in preseason, put your team down I want to see him out there as a penalty killer as opposed to being the guy in the penalty box. So, yeah, of the games that he has played here in exhibition action, this was his quietest, and we'll see, because he was riding a real sort of groundswell of, he had people in this market thinking that
there's a shot.
Yeah, I mean, they're just over a week away from start of the regular season. Could he break camp with the Vancouver Canucks? And he could still, but you do wonder if a night like tonight, and the coaching staff and management, they will look at this thing with a fine-tooth comb. You just wonder what a night like this does, and will he get into the lineup on Friday if, as we expect, the Canucks are going to ice something close to their best available lineup.
Yeah, I think it's a battle of a few guys, Jeff, as well, to be the first call-up if and when there is an injury at some point this season. Archie Bains is another guy, right? He was at prospects camp as well. He's had a long few weeks here and playing in all these preseason games too, scores the goal. A veteran of the preseason, I guess, now, because he's kind of been around and he played meaningful minutes, and he's played in meaningful situations so far for the Vancouver Canucks with the big club. So, you look at him, you look at guys like Ratu, you look at, Jonathan Lecker-Mackey. That's like the next group of guys that down in Abbotsford, you got to go, and they're going to battle every night to try and get that call up, or who's going to be first. So you gain the experience, you use the experience that you get in these NHL preseason games. And, Bains played another solid game. I thought that he was good on both ends of the puck. Obviously he was able to score that goal as well, kind of waited out Skinner a little bit, then was able to roof it. But as for the other two, Jonathan Lecker-Mackey, the four shots, -1. It just wasn't enough there to say that, okay, this guy, there's no way that he shouldn't be there on opening night. And what Rick Tocchet and his staff are looking for, okay, that you got to do something. There's got to be someone there that convinces us that you need to be there. And it wouldn't be in the bottom six either. It's got to be in that top six group, because you're not bringing these guys up to play and in positions to not succeed. And you look at Lecker-Mackey and you look at Ratu, those are two guys that will probably be playing in the top six if they were up here.
Hockey season just around the corner, at least the regular season, but even before it all gets going, plenty going on at Greta Bar YVR. You can watch baseball, football, soccer, and once the hockey season starts up for good, Greta, great spot for all the games, home and away. We're going to be there for Canucks Army viewing parties throughout the season. Details on that coming up. Minutes from the arena, come by before or after the game. You can check out the great street food, all the games, the arcade games that are there as well. If you haven't checked it out, do yourself a favor. Weekly drink specials. Greta Bar is the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar. Let the games begin. Thought it was a little interesting. And look, Rick Tocchet has said a few times, going back to Penticton, don't read into it. Don't overreact. This is what we do here, Talk. Man, this is what we're all about. We dive in, dig into just about everything. You get down to 3-on-3. Usually your skilled guys get opportunities in overtime. Lecker-Mackey didn't get a shift in overtime.
I know. And then he gets a shift and he gets to go for the shootout, though.
Yeah, leading off. A little surprised at that. But I'm with you. Volume shooter. You want to see him shoot the puck. But, as I look through my notes, not terribly dangerous, even with the shot attempts for Jonathan Lecker-Mackey. Let's look at the other end of the ice. Going up against that Oiler lineup, I would suggest that Kevin Lankinen would be in the conversation for the best Canucks on the night. Gives up the power play goal through traffic, and Corey Perry, again, give him time and space. He's scored on a lot of goaltenders over the years. There were breakdowns on the ice there before Lankinen could do his thing ultimately.
Yeah.
But Draisaitl late in the game down the left wing takes a little chip pass from McDavid, got a pretty good shot there. Overtime, as we talked about, there were a couple of close calls, puck into the blue paint, but his job is to keep the puck out of the net, and he did a decent job of that for a guy that, just over a week ago wasn't even signed, was back home in Helsinki. It's been a busy week for him, but when I talked to him on Thursday out at UBC, he was like, yeah, I'm ready, let's go. And he got the start in Seattle, and I thought after a bit of a shaky start there, settled into that game. And again, you give up 2 through 65 minutes of action here, held the Canucks in it, gave them opportunities to win. I think all things considered, even though it's a shootout loss on the record, another decent night for Kevin Lankinen.
Yeah, that's what I think about him. I mean, look, he's a guy that you mentioned. He was in Helsinki, in Finland, waiting for a job, gets the job, has to come over here. Obviously, an adjustment period and time change and all that, and then gets thrown into training camp right away, kind of going through the rigors of that, working with the new goalie coach and meeting his new teammates. Still wearing the old pads. Obviously, he's got some stuff coming in, but yeah, solid. And he's only going to get better, right? I think that there's a lot of practice time that he's going to have, a lot of time that he's able to settle in Vancouver now. They come back. They don't leave again for quite some time. So they're here for about a week and almost 2 weeks before they have to leave again. So that's a good thing for him. And I think that, the Canucks are you look at it, they're lucky to have him right now with the way kind of things are happening around the National Hockey League and their goalies. You mentioned John Gibson as a guy that went down as well.
Yep.
They're probably pretty lucky that they got Lankin in there. But yeah, I mean, I thought he was solid. Didn't have to be spectacular, but made saves when you needed him to, and he got beat on a couple nice plays.
Yeah, stops 24 of 26. The Oilers end up out shooting the Canucks 26-23 on the night. Shots were 2-1 in Edmonton's favor in overtime, even though the Canucks finished with 26 seconds of power play time. Weren't able to do much, if anything, with that. They had Wolanin out there. They had Höglander, Sprong, and Ratu was out for the face-off. But again, the Canucks unable to work the puck around and create anything in overtime. So 26-23, the final shots on goal. And this sort of tells you the story of the night and the kind of lineups that the two teams iced. Christian Wolanin led the Canucks in ice time, 21-41, followed very closely by Mark Friedman at 21 minutes and 39 seconds. So when Wolanin and Friedman are your high ice time guys, you know that there were lots of names that were missing in that Vancouver Canucks lineup. And I am interested to see, so often people think that, the final preseason game, it's going to be a dress rehearsal. I don't know. I think that notion has kind of gone away a little bit in recent years, but the way that the Canucks have come through this 5 games in 7 nights, it's one of the reasons they had so many bodies still in camp. I do think they'll get down to numbers here pretty quickly so that Rick Tocchet can start to drill down with something closer to his opening night lineup, plus some of these last cuts that are going to have to be made before they set the roster. But 5 games in 7 nights with a fair bit of travel in there, to Seattle, to Calgary, to Edmonton. I know not everybody played every night, but the coaching staff was there every night. So that's quite a run for them. And so we'll see. I would expect, again, there's been so much talk in the market about JT Miller, what's going on. Rick Tocchet hinted before tonight's game that, JT would play on Friday. And as we said, Quinn Hughes has had just the one preseason game as well. So, a couple of the best Canucks. We haven't seen much of them here in the preseason. The one area that I do wonder about that strategy, and look, JT Miller doesn't need a lot of preseason action. He knows what it takes to get ready, and his motor's always running. He'll be good to go on October the 9th. If he's battling through something now, then it's probably wise not to be playing him in these meaningless games. But I know that because he hasn't played, there are a lot of people out there that are saying, he's got to be hurt. The Canucks are hiding something. This much I know. JT Miller has been skating every day, even on the days when the Canucks were sent a game group out of town. I was out there on Thursday. He practiced fully. He's done media. And that's the other thing, that this organization, pretty tight when it comes to injured guys speaking to the media. And JT did media both Wednesday and Thursday last week out at UBC. So I do think that they're just being cautious with JT Miller. If there's something there that is nagging him, then I think it's probably the prudent play to keep him out of these lineups right now, get a couple of days of practice in, and then, hopefully he's good to go on Friday. And then remember too, that they don't play until the following Wednesday.
Yeah.
So now there's just
days.
one game. It's a weird schedule here in the preseason with 5 of the 6 games coming in a 7-night stretch, and then a bunch of days off before they play on Friday against the same Edmonton Oilers, at least same uniforms. But I don't know who will be in the Edmonton lineup. Edmonton goes to Seattle on Wednesday and then here to Vancouver to wrap things up. All right, let's get to the 3 stars of this hockey game. The 3 stars are a presentation of Mr. Lube and Tires. Change your oil, change your wipers. Event is on now. Visit MrLube.com to download your coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change, only for a limited time at Mr. Lube, with 18 locations in the Lower Mainland to serve you. 3 stars in this hockey game. We just talked about Kevin Lankinen. Again, all things considered, with the team in front of him, I thought provided a very credible performance in goal for the Vancouver Canucks. It's preseason, but Connor McDavid in on both of the Oiler goals. Yep. He'll be a star of the game just about every night. He suits up all season long, so not quite in midseason form. And look, he kind of treated this thing, I think, the way that we've talked about it. We're probably recognizing the discrepancy between the 2 lineups. We didn't see him go end to end. There was at 2-2, I kind of thought, all right, maybe he's just going to take it into his own hands to try to end it. Didn't really go down that way, but still he figures in both goals. So he's on the score sheet. Connor McDavid is the 2nd star, and a guy that we haven't talked about here yet on this show tonight, but people have been talking about him. The fact that, he's made it this deep into camp and is still on the Vancouver Canuck roster. Kirill Kudryavtsev with the nice assist, a quick shot there from the left point, top left circle that was deflected by Nate Smith, tied the game at 2. But you look at the night. Kudratsev led the Canucks, led the hockey game, 8 shot attempts, Surf. He had 2 on goal, 5 were blocked. So he's got to find a way to get some of those shots through. 1 missed the target. But still, whenever I see a shot attempt total like that, it tells me guy has the puck on his stick an awful lot in the offensive zone. This is a young guy that's got offensive instincts, had a big season in the Ontario Hockey League a couple of years ago, focused a little bit more on his defense last year, some of the areas that the Canucks wanted him to round out and work on his game. I think he did that. But kind of sneaky, and Murph talked about it at one point in the broadcast. There's only been 2 7th-rounders in Canucks history that have ever played NHL games for the organization. There are a lot of people think that Kirill Kudratsev could be the 3rd on that list from long shot to someday working his way into the Vancouver Canucks lineup.
No, I absolutely agree. I thought he's played well. I think he's going to have his chance at some point. He's got to work maybe a little bit more physicality. You'd like to see he didn't have a hit. You'd like to see a little bit more of that from your defenseman. But like you mentioned, 8 attempts on net, 2 hit the net, 5 blocked, and one was missed. So when you have that from your defenseman, they're encouraging him to get pucks to the net, and usually good things do happen. It's interesting. We had a question from someone on one of our socials, and you mentioned that name. It's who's going to play more meaningful minutes sooner? Will it be Willander, Kudratsev, or Pettersson? Of the 3 defensive prospects, who do you think?
You got 2 left side guys, in Kudratsev and Pettersson, who are turning pro, are going to play in Abbotsford. We'll see if they're regulars in the Abbotsford lineup this year. If they get some spot duty, do they sort of cancel each other out? Are they going to have to platoon there? Canucks have a lot of bodies, and will have a lot of bodies out in the Fraser Valley.
Yeah.
And obviously, Willander's got the pedigree as the 1st-rounder, but another year at Boston University. We'll see when he comes out of school, when he signs. I wouldn't anticipate that any of these 3 are going to play meaningful minutes in games that matter for the Canucks this season. But I do think that it's a bit of a derby, although I probably would give the nod to Willander just as
he is the 1st-rounder.
He's the 1st-rounder, sort of the golden boy, if you will, and a right side guy. There's a premium on right shots throughout the organization. So again, if he comes out of school after this year, we'll see how quickly he becomes a fixture on the Vancouver Canucks defense. But I think I would lean to Tom Willander to answer that question. And hey, we appreciate all the feedback. And we should remind you as well, if you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribing to our YouTube channel. You don't want to miss any content all season long. Irf and I will do post-game podcasts, but we drop occasional shows throughout the year as well. And if you're not subscribing to the YouTube channel, could miss out on some of the content we push out here at Rink Wide. And of course, follow us as well on all of the socials that you see on your screen as this season moves along. All right, so we got to the 3 stars there, Lankinen, McDavid, and Kudratsev. Why don't we get to the stat that stands out? Another one of our features from last year. And the stat that stands out, we mentioned it briefly, but Jonathan Karamaki leading the Vancouver Canucks with 4 shots on goal. I like that. I would have liked to have seen him look a little more dangerous on those shots, but this is a guy that you expect to put pucks to the net. He did that tonight more than anybody else on the hockey club. So hard to knock the fact that he's got that shooter's mentality. It's just now about finding the mark, honing in, and maybe forcing goaltenders to make tougher saves than he did in this one. But still, that's a stat that jumps out at me, one of the youngest players in the lineup, and getting 4 shots on goal to lead the hockey club.
Yeah, and I think that, like off the top, you've mentioned all preseason long, you got to do something, you got to be noticed. This is one of the things that you will notice him for, is the 4 shots on net. That's something that you want from the youngster. One of the things that we didn't notice, that no shifts in overtime. So it's interesting. Your guy leads the team in shots, but he doesn't get a shift in overtime. There's obviously, it's something that the coaching staff thought a little differently. Maybe didn't want to put him out there in overtime. If it's up to me, he would probably be out there in these meaningless games, but maybe wants to give some other guys some ice time there. So yeah, Jonathan Lecker-Mackey leading the team with 4 shots. Obviously a positive sign, something you want from your youngster as he works his way up to try to make a spot with the big club.
We mentioned the high minute men for the Canucks, Willander and Friedman. We should mention as well Max Sasson, the low ice time guy in this hockey game at 13 minutes and 1 second, 45 seconds of shorthanded ice time. So most of his ice time tonight coming at 5-on-5. I mentioned Max Sasson not because I thought he stood out in this game, but he has played all 5 of the preseason games for the Canucks. So that's 5 in 7 nights. That's an awful lot for anybody. And it's not like they stayed in Alberta over the weekend. Like, they flew back to Vancouver, had a day off on Sunday, but then back on the flight. So, all these road games, Seattle, Calgary, now Edmonton, you're trying to find your skating legs after getting off the plane hours before. These are situations you don't see in the regular season, but these are all tests. These are challenges. And had a good chance to talk to Max Sasson last week after the Abbotsford game. He said, hey, back-to-back, no big deal. Do that all the time. The American Hockey League schedule essentially is a whole bunch of back-to-backs. But 5 and 7, that's a challenge that you don't see at many levels of hockey. So, again, I didn't think that there was a whole lot in his game here tonight, just 3 for 9 in face-offs. He's a guy that showed well at Young Stars, a little bit older than most of the players in Penticton, guy that put up decent numbers in Abbotsford last year, 42 points in his first full season in the American Hockey League. That's where he's headed.
What do you make of the 5 and 7 though? Like the coaching staff, what you're going to get out of him.
Yep.
Maybe is it filling a spot on the roster? Like obviously you want to fill it out, but there's other players that can play in these games. Why is Max playing every game?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, Jack Rathbone was the same situation.
Yeah.
He just kept playing him. Now, if I'm a player, even at 5 and 7, I'm like, I can't prove anything if they leave me behind in Vancouver. If they put me in the press box,
for sure, he wants to play for sure. Yeah.
Now, did he put his best foot forward in this one? No, and I think context matters here. Mm-hmm. Not only are you going up against McDavid or Draisaitl, you just played a lot of hockey. It's a fair bit of wear and tear, even early in the season. So not a knock. I mean, I think we all figured that Max Sasson was going to go down to Abbotsford. I think he'll be one of the frontline guys on the Abbotsford Canucks, and I think he has worked his way into the conversation of a guy that could play NHL games for them, much like Archie Baines got his feet wet in the second half of the season last year, got his first look, in fact, got a couple of call-ups from the Canucks. I think Max Sasson, this is an organization that's particularly strong down the middle in terms of depth, and so if he just does what he does, keep on knocking on the door there. But that's why I think Aatu Räty and the way that he has performed here in the last couple of weeks has moved his way to the top of the pecking order among the centermen when it comes to depth. I do think the Canucks will start the season with Pettersson, Miller, Suter, and Bluger. Now, Teddy Bluger, Patrick Alvin told us on the eve of training camp, some minor medical procedure just before camp, skated on his own in a non-contact jersey up in Penticton, but he's been cleared. He's been with the main group. Rick Tocchet thought that he might play in this game. He didn't, so we'll keep an eye on practices this week and see if Teddy Bluger is ready to play Friday, and if not, Bluger said last week that he was pretty certain that he'd be ready for opening night. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But not sold on Pia Suter as the third line center. He's a Swiss Army knife. We know that. He gave the Canucks some solid minutes in a bunch of different roles last year, but 3 and 8 in the faceoff circle, so 3 for 11. If you're going to be a center and a third line center, you're going to be a penalty killer. You got to be able to win some faceoffs, and so just something to keep an eye on as things move along here for Pia Suter. Corey Perry taking exception to what Suter had the gall to look at Connor McDavid. I'm not even sure what happened there, but Corey Perry riding to the rescue of the captain there early in the third period. So kind of funny in this hockey game. Whatever the case, I do think Suter's going to be the third line center, and then it's a question of who are his wingers. Dakota Joshua is not going to be ready to start the season, so we'll sort of see. I mean, I do think that there are still some things to think about here for Rick Tocchet and the coaching staff, like Daniel Sprong, who he's had his moments and he figures in the scoring. He gets the second assist on the Archie Baines goal in this game. Had the beautiful solo effort last week out in Abbotsford. He hasn't had a sniff. He hasn't played a second with Elias Pettersson yet. And there was some talk about maybe Sprong getting that chance with Pettersson. And so, we'll see what Friday brings there. Danton Heinen was with Miller and Besser throughout training camp. And then again, JT hasn't played here in the preseason. So whatever chemistry those three built through training camp, I don't know if it's dissolved. I'm not sure how much chemistry was there in the first place, but it is interesting the way that Rick Tocchet has conducted the preseason to this point, just in terms of trying to integrate some of these new players with guys that they ultimately may be playing with once they start playing for keeps next week. Yeah,
it's almost a disservice if Sprong starts on that fourth line. Like you brought him here, what he can do with the puck. Elias Pettersson, obviously the relationship he has there. Jonathan Lekkerimäki is probably going to Abbotsford. I think we can all agree on that. So is it going to be Sprong that moves up? that third line's interesting, right? Because if they go high, if you keep Heinen up there with JT Miller and Brock Besser, you go DeBrusk, Pedersen, and Sprong, Höglander, Blueger, Garland. That's a small line like that, right? I mean, that's one that's kind of a little bit scary there. And then Sherwood, Suter, and then really the extra forward. You got a few guys that can fill in that spot. But yeah, I mean, there are some options definitely there for Rick Tocchet and his coaching staff to deal with. But the top two lines they can probably figure out. I wonder if Höglander ends up going up and you put Heinen on the third line just to kind of give it a little bit of size and maybe have, the ability to match up against other lines. But again, an interesting conversation to have. Kiefer Sherwood tonight, though, 15-12 of ice time, not on the ice for a shot against. Not one. Not on the ice for a shot against. So an interesting stat there for Kiefer Sherwood, who is an ass to play against, according to some players.
Yeah, and saw him doing a little bit of penalty killing again, as we did last week on Abbotsford, and he said that's something that he wants to build out into his game. He didn't get the opportunity on Friday night down in Seattle, but just with the lack of other NHLers and other penalty killers, they threw him that bone tonight, and be interesting to see where that project goes for Kiefer Sherwood, who didn't do a lot of penalty killing in Nashville last year, but sort of profiles that way: speed, tenacity, fearless to block some shots, and has got that speed the other way if opportunities present themselves. So no, there's going to be a lot to watch in these practices here in the next couple of days, just to get a sense of what the coaching staff is thinking. I have to imagine that the Canucks will get down in numbers before too long, maybe as early as Tuesday. But I would think by midweek that you would get basically, roll the bus up to Rogers Arena and pack it up with a bunch of guys that'll be sent out to Abbotsford, which is where they're going to start their seasons. As the Canucks get ready to begin a new National Hockey League season, the Vancouver Canadians want to thank Seas fans for another great year out of the Nat all summer long. If you're looking to guarantee your seat for the action next year in 2025, visit the website, canadiansbaseball.com, or you can give the front office a call, 604-872-5232. The Vancouver Canadians getting to the Northwest League final, kind of a little short against Spokane, but still a great run for the Vancouver Canadians. It was great to see playoff baseball here in Vancouver, and let's hope. Certainly the expectations are that there's going to be playoff hockey for the Vancouver Canucks after what they were able to accomplish late last year against this same Edmonton team. All right. We'll wrap up with a couple of things here. We're not going to go too deep on a night like this one, our first night of the season, and after a game that really didn't offer up a lot. I mean, it picked up in the third period with 3 of the 4 goals scored, and then chances in some in overtime as well. But we'll save the real deep dives for October 9th and beyond, when the Vancouver Canucks get going for good against the Calgary Flames. Just the one more preseason game coming up on Friday at home. Just the second home preseason game. And yes, they were the home team out in Abbotsford, but just the second game at Rogers Arena here in the preseason. And again, we don't know if McDavid and or Draisaitl will be in uniform for the Edmonton Oilers. Hopefully find that out a little bit later on in the week. But all season long, we'll be keeping an eye on the lines
absolutely.
As these games go along. Our friends at Bet365, what do you got for us tonight, Irv?
Well, I took a look at lines for points. And I went Jake DeBrusk to finish with over or under 48.5 points. I'm thinking over. I'm thinking if he plays with Elias Pettersson, he's on the top power play unit. He's a guy that has scored a lot of points in his career already. You hammer the over on that, don't you, on Jake DeBrusk? It's one of those things that I don't think that it's not going to hit. I mean, obviously injuries and things derail, and if he moves up and down the lineup and things like that, but I think that's a pretty easy one to go and look at. For context, Elias Pettersson's was at 90.5, and obviously a segment brought to you by our good friends at Bet365, a proud partner of the Harrison Price, Canucks, Convo, and Rink Wide Vancouver. Open an account with the best Bet365 today about a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening an account. I think JT Miller's was teetering right around the 100 mark. I think he was way up there.
He got close to 100 a couple of years ago, got over 100 last year with 103. So we'll be really curious to see how he backs that kind of season up. And of course, a lot of talk. Will Quinn repeat as the Norris winner? Not easy. Was looking at it last night. Nick Lidstrom, the last guy to win back-to-back Norrises, won 3 in a row 15 years ago. So just at this sort of golden era of young puck-moving defensemen with Cale Makar and Adam Fox and Miro Heiskanen and Rasmus Dahlin and Evan Bouchard in Edmonton, and of course Quinn is very much in that mix, and he's the reigning Norris Trophy winner, but backing it up has been difficult for the last decade and a half. You mentioned Canucks Convo and Sekeres and Price as well. Make sure that you're watching those shows. They're back up to 5 days a week now as hockey season is here again. And, of course, some great content being pumped out at Canucks Army. If you're looking for the latest, make sure you add that to your bookmarks and don't miss out on all the content that's being produced at Canucks Army. And we said it earlier, but we mean it. Make sure you're following us here on our YouTube channel. If you're not already, we'd appreciate that. You can rate and review us as well. We love the feedback. We'll try to integrate that into our shows as we work our way to the start of the regular season on October the 9th, and follow us on all of our social channels as well. Just want to throw this out as well, because we had fun in the playoffs doing Rink Wide Worldwide. We're not going to make that a nightly feature. I mean, by the time the playoffs roll around, perhaps, but we're always curious to know where in the world you're checking us out. And we know that Canucks Nation is spread across this planet. Boy, we saw that, didn't we, in the playoffs with the feedback
crazy
that
places.
we got.
Places I hadn't even heard of.
Load up our inbox. We'll build the map out as we go here, and periodically in the regular season, maybe weekly or so, we'll check in, but we want to start building it up now. So we want to know where you are on this planet called Earth, checking us out, our first Rink Wide episode of the new season. Drop us a line on any of our social channels or in the YouTube comments as well. 3-2, the Canucks fall in a shootout to the Edmonton Oilers. Archie Baines and Nate Smith get the Vancouver goals. They bookend goals by Corey Perry and Ben Gleason. And then in the shootout, Leon Draisaitl and Victor Arvidsson. Arvidsson gets the game winner after Draisaitl with a ripped a slap shot past Kevin Lankinen to put the Oilers on the board. Lekkerimäki and Sprong were the Canucks shooters in the shootout. Neither one of them able to score. 3-2, a shootout loss for the Vancouver Canucks. 5 of their 6 preseason games are now in the books. And I don't know about you, but I feel a little better, a little rust off, some dust off the studio desks here as well. It's been a while, but looking forward to a big season of hockey in Vancouver and a big season post-game after every Canucks game, all 82, plus the one on Friday night. We'll be back to do the preseason finale on Friday, the Canucks and the Oilers. But for Jacob Lazar working hard behind the scenes, for Irf, I'm Jeff. Again, we appreciate your support. We'll get better as the season goes. Need to get that chemistry here in the preseason between us as well. We had it in the playoffs, and it won't take much to get it back as well. But 3-2, Oilers beat the Canucks in a shootout. That's going to do it for this episode of Rink Wide Vancouver.
Thanks for watching this video. For more great content from Canucks Army, check out Sekeres and Price, Rink Wide Vancouver, or our show, Canucks Conversation. We're your one-stop shop for interviews, breaking news, and a live Canucks postgame show hosted by Jeff Patterson.